Hassan. Good morning, council members.
Good morning.
Members of the public, thank you for joining us all today. We're going to jump right into our agenda. We know that there are a number of other meetings and things going on later in the day, so we're going to try to stay on schedule today. For those of you that had to come through some of the weather today, we appreciate the travel, so thank you. We want to jump right into, before I jump right into old business, a couple of welcomes and housekeeping issues. Stuart Poole is joining us, and he has over 20 years of experience with the State Division of Budget. He is the Assistant Chief Budget Examiner and with the Public Protections General Government Unit with DOB. So we want to welcome you today. Thank you. To the council, also Paula Clark is serving as the alternate for Lisa Brooks, and Valerie White as the alternate for Laura Zapata today. So we very much appreciate everybody joining us. We'd like to cover old business, the September 13th, 2018 meeting minutes, and then I have some housekeeping items on here in terms of rules of operating and how we're going to go forward as a council. So let's do minutes first. Everybody has had the minutes distributed to them. Is there a motion to move the minutes? The motion from Ron Tascarella and a second from Pravina. With a motion on the table to approve the minutes, is there any discussion? Are there any changes that need to be made? Any concerns, objections about the minutes? Okay, seeing none, there's been a motion and a second, so we'll call for a voice vote to approve. All in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by putting your hand up and saying aye.
Aye.
Great. Any objections? Any abstentions? And the motion carries. The minutes for September 13th have been approved. And thank you all for that. Procurement Council operating rules. We'd like to have a real quick housekeeping conversation. Over the last several meetings, we are excited to announce that people have become more and more active and participants in this council meeting. For those of you that have been here historically, the meetings have not always been full of people this engaged, so we're very excited about that. But we do believe that some of the casual application of some of the rules for the council needs to be tightened up a little bit. So we'd like to just address a couple of those issues. The chair and the councils that are staff have all been going through a Robert's Rules exercise to make sure that we are providing you the best service we can as staff to the council and as the chair. I believe we distributed a set of rules to everybody, just a set of reminders of procedural things and how they work. We want to put out there's always the possibility that something new is going to come up. So we do have our reference materials for the rules with us. But if you see a procedural mechanism that is different from how you understand the rules typically, we ask that you rise to a point of order immediately and let us know so that we don't have to undo any actions. So if you do see anything that's a concern or that you want us to explain the procedure of, we would love it if you would raise that as soon as you identify that risk. I want to divide the discussion into two sections. We are going to have some basic operating rules added for today and just some reminders about how we're going to go forward and do business. And then we're going to talk about having a rules work group, and we're going to be looking for volunteers for that rules work group to discuss some of the more considerable items that will have to be brought back to the council for a vote. So for the purposes of this meeting, non-procedural votes for purposes of being able to record them quickly, document what's happening, and move on to the next item of business. We're going to take non-procedural votes as roll call votes for this meeting. So everybody already identifies individually, and our staff has been trying to count from the side. So what I'm going to do is call the roll for each vote, the non-procedural votes, so not things like the minutes, not things to adjourn, but the actual substantive votes in front of the council. I'm going to call the roll for. I'm going to call the roll in the order that the statute identifies your seat or your representation on the council, with the exception of I'm going to call the chair last. As a reminder, quorum is 11 and majority for any vote is also 11. We had a discussion last time about that. That is statutory, so that is not something that we can change, but that is how the rules for this council work. We're appointing, is Angela here?
Oh, it should be a little late. But...
Okay, so for purposes of today's exercise, we're appointing both Sue Filburn and Dan Rice recording secretaries. There's a couple of notes on that. We'd like to have an official point of contact for each meeting that minutes and all of those things go through. This is just an etiquette reminder. Items before the council are brought to the council. They're not individually sponsored items by any member of the council. So what we would hope is that you would direct all of the speakers, everybody participating would direct all of your comments and questions through the chair. And we think that has the ability to help us make sure that this is a council decision that we're discussing and a substantive decision, not necessarily an individual representing a perspective. So we'd like to curtail that talk a little bit. We'll see how it works. So on a preferred source issue, on any preferred source issue that's before the council, we're going to maintain the tradition that the preferred source will be allowed to present the definition and application. Both of the agencies that have statutory responsibilities will be able to add their report to the record. That's OGS and ESD. Then we're going to ask, and all of those speakers, we'd ask you to be mindful of time. Then we're going to ask for a motion to approve the definition and a second. Then we're going to go into discussion. We have not implemented time limits yet. That is something that hopefully we'll task the work group with deciding whether that is appropriate. But we just ask everybody to be mindful of their comments and how long they're running. On any preferred source definition, we are going to hold 2 votes. One vote will be for the approval of the definition, and the second vote will be for the approval of the preferred source to provide services under that definition, what we have all affectionately called the check mark. So it is the chair's intention to conclude this meeting on schedule at 1:30. Sometimes the best of intentions get waylaid, but my hope is to keep us on schedule today. So if we can be conscious of that, that would be great. Any speakers who have prepared notes, they're requested to submit those to either of the folks acting as recording secretary electronically within 24 hours of this meeting. That way we don't have to take dictation off of the video, and we have a copy of it so we can accurately reflect your comments for the minutes. Okay, so establishment of a rules work group. We are announcing a call for participants in a rules work group. We're going to take volunteers for the work group through Friday, December 7th, not because we're trying to rush people, but because we are trying to address these rules issues for next year's proceedings. The work group is going to be charged with collecting from council members any of their procedural concerns, cataloging them, identifying possible rule and procedural strategies, and then we will need to present those recommendations to the council at large, and the council at large will need to adopt rules to operate by. Including in this charge are, at a minimum, these are the things that I am hopeful that the work group will at least consider, even if these are items that are ultimately found not to be part of our recommended rules. We would like the consideration of whether there should be speaker time limits, the implementation of rules about whether a council member can abstain and when that's appropriate, the procedures for non-council members to provide comment, how business before the council will be handled when the meeting time has expired, and if there are any recommendations for either council member or speaker etiquette, as well as any other issues that may come up during the work group's business. So We will be taking those volunteers. If anybody wants to volunteer, you're welcome to do that. If you want to let us know now, that's great. But ideally, you would let either Sue or Dan know that today, or you would send an email to the staff for the council before next Friday. And we very much appreciate that. We are hoping to get into doing a rules work group immediately after understanding that we have volunteers for that. So the next thing we want to make sure that we do is, so we've reviewed what the rules are for quorum. I want to just double check with either Sue or Dan that you see that we have quorum.
We do.
We have 18 with me. Okay, so there 18 obviously is more than 11, constitutes quorum. 11 remains majority for that. So that's very exciting. So I guess I get to continue to talk going into new business for a minute. The procurement guidelines work group has been working very, very hard. And again, for all of the folks that have been participating in that or have had your staff participating in that, that's been a great experience, and thank you. The group has actually come up with finding my notes. There we go. The group has actually come up with a number of, in some cases, small but significant, and in some cases, significant changes to the procurement guidelines. I wanted to make sure that everybody had a status update of that. So we have gone, hang on, I'm on the wrong page. Got it. So we have compiled all of the comments that have been submitted on all of the sections of the document. They've all been put into one single spreadsheet to be able to track. All the comments can be seen next to each other. Staff has gone through and taken a shot at Section 1 and Section 2 as a first draft that has been delivered back to the work group. The work group has provided feedback on that. If you're participating in the work group, we're trying to tie feedback up on those two sections, if you could get that back to us. Staff is working on Section 3 of the document. We are hoping to have a first draft of Section 3 out to everybody in December for consideration. The work group has raised issues that sort of cover the gambit of procurement. They've included everything from inclusion of efficiency as a priority, not just in the document as how procurement works, but also in how the document works. So there's been a request to think about the document in the future as an automated workflow path so that you can not have to read the entire document to find answers on specific types of procurements. So there's been a lot of that reconfiguration, and staff has been looking at not only documenting those workflows and organizing it in a way where the guidelines will be able to be navigated through. There'll be a lot to digest for everybody who's not on the work group, so we promise that everybody will have that amount of time to digest all of the changes before it comes before this group for a vote. We may even need to have a discussion session at one of the meetings and then a vote at the next one so that everybody has enough room to digest it. So it has become more than just an editing and updating of the document. It has really become an evaluation of the document for effectiveness for any level of procurement or purchasing officer embedded in a state agency. We've talked about reconciliation of the gaps between practice, and there's some sections that conflict in the statute. We've talked about clearly distinguishing between procurement methodologies and things that are more purchasing or financial mechanisms. So the difference between choosing a procurement methodology as opposed to using a purchase order or a purchase card to execute the purchase or to pay for the purchase. Those lines are being very clearly drawn through the document. We're talking about using the document to educate purchasers on strategies to maximize supplier diversity. That will include maximizing preferred sources, MWBEs, SDVOBs, vendors who prioritize green and sustainable products. We've talked about using the document to focus procurement staff on the importance of scope development. And that will include everything from how do you estimate the total value of your procurement, all the way through what are the steps you really should have gone through to have a good scope set up for your procurement. And the reality is scope is the work group has identified that scope is the thing that drives success in all of the orders of precedent. At the preferred source level, at the use of an OGS centralized contract, at the use of an agency-specific contract, scope really is the thing that drives form, function, and utility all the way through that process. So that's why Section 3 is so rigorously under development, because a lot of that content lives there. Most of the other content is about some of the mechanics of different types of procurement. So we do expect that once we get all of the fundamental information set up, that the other sections will move a little more quickly. So if anybody has questions about that, you're welcome to contact the work group. You're welcome to contact me directly. We're happy to brief that. If anybody's not part of the work group but would like to see the questions that have been raised, the comments that have been raised, please let us know, and we would be happy to include you in that conversation. So that's the update on the guidelines work group. 2019 Procurement Council meeting dates have been announced with alternates. We'd like everybody to take a look. We believe that we've overlaid calendars on things like holidays and that sort of thing. So we're hopeful that we have accommodated all of that. If anybody sees a big gap there or anybody has a specific concern about any of the dates, please let us know. You can see that the dates are January 30th with an alternate of February 6th, April 17th with an alternate of April 24th, September 5th with an alternate of September 12th, and November 7th with an alternate of November 13th. All of you'll notice that it is not proportionally spread out across the 4 seasons or the 4 quarters. There is not a proposed meeting during the summer. That is a challenge that we had this year, where we had trouble getting attendance and getting to quorum during the summer months. So we're hopeful that this will address those issues. Again, this is your council, so if you have concerns or comments about those dates, feel free to share them. If anybody has something, feel free to share them now. If you don't, please feel free to share them with staff as soon as possible, because it is our hope that everybody will block these dates out on their calendar so that we can have a successful set of meetings next year. Does anybody have any concerns or comments about those dates right now? Okay. Under other new business, NYSPSP has submitted an appeal to the OGS Commissioner regarding digital accessibility and usability testing and remediation reporting services. That appeal is under review by the OGS Commissioner, and we will report on that as the appeal is resolved. Mark, do we have any legislative updates? No legislative updates. Okay, so in the continued attempt to make sure that procurement issues appear in front of this council, we have asked the team that manages the OGS hourly-based IT services contract to present. I have had a conversation with a number of the council members, and I'd like to remind you that this is your council, right? When we put this agenda together, we're adamant about having procurement items on there, but we would like ideas from the group about others. I can continue to promote OGS contracts shamelessly as you want, but I do feel like if anybody else has other issues to be put on the agenda, we would welcome that. There are a number and variety of perspectives here, so we'd like to make sure that if there are other procurement issues to be vetted, that they can be addressed. Other than that, we're going to turn it over to Mark Kleinhens for the presentation on the hourly-based IT services, and then we'll go back into regular business.
Good morning. My name is Mark Kleinhens. I'm the Assistant Director for IT Procurement for OGS. Wanted to talk to you a little bit today on the hourly-based IT services contract. Give you a little background of it. In 2012, Governor Cuomo came to OGS and said, you have to make contracting more efficient, more effective. And one of those areas was consulting services for staff augmentation on IT projects. Part of our mandate on that was to also not only make them more rapidly accessible and more cost effective, but also in bringing in women and minority-owned businesses to make sure that they were represented in our market space. It's been a success. We brought the contract in, we stood it up, we got $16 million worth of savings in the first year. This year we've achieved $19.5 million in savings. So in the past 7 years, we've made over $100 million worth of savings on this one centralized contract alone. For our authorized users, they have one single contract with standardized forms. For our vendor population, they have standardized terms and conditions. They're all agreeing to the same thing. They know what they're doing when they get here. Our customers know what they're doing when they sign up for this. So we've had a little feedback from our agencies about the length of time it takes for people to get an HBIT staff. So I wanted to put this representation up. This is an average, this is calendar days, but an average for executive agencies, 57 days is how long it takes from the time that OGS receives a form until the time an onboarding takes place, a person is actually sitting in a chair. So if we walk through it, the 4.2 days, that first blue, dark blue block, that is the time from the time OGS receives a form. We go back and forth with the agency to clarify their requirements, to make sure all the dates are correct, and to make sure the requirements are within the scope of the contract. The next 14 days, again, that's 14 calendar days, the vendors have 10 business days in order to get their candidates together, to do their background checks, to make sure their candidates that they're presenting to OGS are appropriate for the requested positions. The next 1.5 days, OGS has to go through those resumes to make sure that the skills presented match the requirements. We also do a fiscal analysis. It's a little bit more, if we have enough resumes, we cut off the top half, the ones who charge too much. It's a little bit less than, we cut off a little bit less than half. If there's too few candidates, we pass through with whatever we get. The analysis has already been taken care of. The 37.2 days, that is really the length of time that it takes agencies to select candidates they want to interview, carry out those interviews, notify the vendors of what candidates they want to select, and to onboard those candidates. So this is a very rapid process in our eyes. OGS really has 5.7 days of that 57 days. We are going to go through and lean our process to make sure it is as streamlined as possible. But you can see the majority of that time is on the agency side. Back to our original history part, we talked about the need to include MWBEs in our process. That was one of our original mandates. As you can see through this chart, MWBEs represent 44% of the direct spend, WBEs 24%, combined MWBEs 19%, and other is 13%. And even on the other, within this contract, there is layers of subcontracting relationship. So we're often pulling in MWBEs through those subcontracting relationships. So it's a very effective contract in that format. So again, because of our feedback, we wanted to make sure that, you folks are the agency administrators. You are the ones who are getting these complaints. You are the ones you need to get contracts done. So we wanted you to have the information, the latest information we could give you to make sure that you could respond to these issues. We're now going to post this on the OGS website, on the HBITS main page. I know it's really hard to see. It'll be better once it's on, it'll be posted on the web so you can bring it up on your screens. This will give you each individual task order assignment. You can track the task order by agency, the skill set, the job title, when we receive the forms, which stage it's at within our review, and where in the process it is, and when the candidates were actually onboarded. So if you are getting feedback from your technical people saying, hey, it's taking a long time to get this HBITS person on site, you can see, well, you know, it took a long time for OGS to go back and forth with you to resolve those initial questions on your requirements. Or you received the resumes 15 days ago and you still haven't scheduled interviews. If you're running into issues like that, we have a dedicated HBITS team that does nothing all day long but HBITS. They would love to talk to your people about this. Please, if your people need training on how to streamline, if they're having problems getting their requirements down, if they're having problems being successful on interviews, please contact us and we'll make those trainings happen. There's the contact information. They are the experts on this contract. I'm just a talking head here. So if you want to talk to actual people that know HBITS inside and out, this is the way to contact Terry and her team. They know all about HBITS. Is there any questions anyone has for me?
Sean?
Just on the calendar, is that the number of days? You said 57 days. Is that full calendar days or is that just business days?
57 calendar days.
So if you take away weekends, you might be down at actually 45 days, give or take a few.
Depends on how the calendar falls, on holidays and everything else. We thought it would be more representative to show calendar days.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Mark? Okay, great. Mark, thank you very much. So, again, just as a reminder, we'd like to encourage people to, when you speak, it will be helpful to us if you could just remind us who you are. When you go to the mic, we would appreciate that. It'll help the folks that are keeping the minutes and all. So the next item on our agenda is reporting for applications for preferred source designation approved under the OGS Standing Authority. John, do you have a report?
There have been none since the last meeting on September 13th.
Remember when we talked about concise, short, sweet, right? Okay, great. So the next item on the agenda is the NICED application for mail fulfillment. We have listed the speakers in order, NICED, then OGS, and then ESD. ESD and OGS are going to work on whether we're going to go back and forth on the order in the future. So just so, right, because we all have different reports to provide. But in this case, Praveen, is that okay? That's the order we've established. So we would like to do that. I did skip, when I talked about a couple of the rules we were talking about for today, I did skip one. We have traditionally allowed council members to yield for comment, and we've traditionally allowed that to happen to folks that are not on the council. We are going to charge the rules work group with addressing that issue about whether that continues to be the appropriate mechanism for taking comment. So we will keep with the past practice. However, we are asking all non-council speakers to be limited to 5 minutes with their comments, unless the council at large asks for the conversation to continue. And all comments need to be on this topic. They need to, this is not a forum for general comments that we're going to take. So with that said, we're going to go through the order that is listed on the agenda. And first, we're going to ask Maureen O'Brien from NICED to come up and present the application.
Thanks very much. Can everyone hear me okay? Good afternoon. My name is Maureen O'Brien, and I'm the President and CEO of New York State Industries for the Disabled. I'd like to thank the Procurement Council members for your time and thoughtful consideration of the proposed modernization of the definition of mail fulfillment services. Let me start with just a short history of why the modernization of the definition of mail fulfillment services is needed. The standard 20 years ago was one master copy of a form letter was dropped off to a mail fulfillment center where it was photocopied thousands of times, and then each copy was folded, inserted, sealed, stamped, and eventually mailed. Fast forward 10 years ago, thousands of personalized letters were individually printed at a state agency print shop, couriered to a mail fulfillment center where they were folded, inserted, sealed, sorted, and mailed. 10 more years forward to today, an electronic mailing file is emailed or Dropboxed to a mail fulfillment center where it is mail merged. The data is cleaned and the address is corrected, and then a personalized letter is printed with an individual address, barcode, and zip +4. Each letter is then folded, inserted, sealed, pre-sorted, and eventually mailed. The letters returned as undeliverable or change of address are updated, and a clean file is returned to the state agency. The current definitions that NYSED and our member agencies do business under are in the 20-year-old and 10-year-old examples that I have used. The modernization of the mail fulfillment definition that you will entertain today would simply allow NYSED and our member agencies to operate by today's standards. The disadvantages of working under a 20-year-old definition makes NYSED and our member agencies uncompetitive in today's marketplace. Imagine using a 20-year-old cell phone or computer for your day-to-day work. These changes in the marketplace drove the Procurement Council to form a work group in 2016 to negotiate the modernization of the definition of mail fulfillment services. The work group was comprised of representatives from NYSED, the Business Council of New York, Department of Health, Office of General Services, the Printing Industries Alliance, Office of Mental Health, Division of Budget, ITS, SUNY, Empire State Development, NYSPSP, and the Center for Disability Services. Those who served on the work group can attest that this was a highly negotiated definition where they were responsive to the concerns raised by various constituencies. Action on this definition by the Council was tabled in 2016. Council members voiced a desire to wait until NYSED's designation agreement with state education was completed. Sorry about that. Last month, I sent to all members of the Council an executive summary of NYSED's annual report filed with SED and a copy of the 2017 executed agreement. In addition, I have met or spoken with nearly all the members of the Council and directly responded to questions that you had. I truly hope that this dialogue has demonstrated transparency and NYSED's focus on creating jobs for individuals with disabilities. The goal of this modernized definition is twofold: utilize today's technology and preserve jobs for individuals with disabilities. 4 nonprofits currently do the bulk of this work: the Center for Disability Services in Albany with 165 employees, FedCap in New York City with 34 employees, Southeast Works in Buffalo with 20 employees, and the Warren, Washington, Albany ARC with 68 employees. From 2015 to today, we've been fortunate. Ancillary contracts for mailroom services and packaging have allowed for the creation of 20 new positions for individuals with disabilities, amounting to 15,000 hours of work. We've also been really fortunate with our state agency customers that have agreed to work with us, allowing us to retain contracts while this definition has been negotiated. Our state agency customers, though, have made it crystal clear that they want a one-stop shop for mail fulfillment services that includes electronic file transfer and letter printing. Make no mistake, this work goes away for nearly 300 individuals with disabilities without modernization of the definition. So let me give you a live example. In the case of the Center for Disability Services here in Albany, the center holds a mail fulfillment contract with New York State Office of Temporary Disability Assistance, OTDA. OTDA prints the letters in the OTDA print shop. The letters are then boxed up and couriered to the center. OTDA no longer wants the letters with personal information to go outside of a chain of custody. It's a data safety issue for them. They have requested that the center receive the file electronically and print the letters on site prior to folding, sealing, sorting, and mailing them. Under the current definitions, the center cannot meet this customer need. In addition, OTDA is missing out on the efficiencies related to the file being delivered electronically, the data cleaning and return addresses. The center could better manage their staff with electronic delivery. One morning that I visited the center, there were a number of idle employees. A glitch of some sort had happened at the OTDA print shop, and all of the boxes of letters that were due to be delivered had not yet arrived. Had the center printed the letter the night before on site, all of the staff would have been diligently working upon their arrival. Imagine getting over all the hurdles that public transportation in a wheelchair creates to get to work and then be sent home. I appreciate the efforts of the Council and OGS in fully understanding the business model at the Center for Disability Services. All work on preferred source contracts at the Center for Disability Services Mail Fulfillment Center is done by the non-profit that employs those with significant disabilities. The printing for the OTDA contract, as well as the vast majority of our projects, are being done at state agencies. The statements by the Printers Industry Alliance that this is approval for digital printing in all forms is completely false and misleading. This is not business that is currently in the hands of any for-profit entity. This is not business that will be taken away from any for-profit entity. Printing on a NYSED contract can only be done in conjunction with mail fulfillment services. If we are not mailing it, we cannot print it. Open Book New York lists 12 contracts for mail fulfillment services among New York State agencies that also included printing. 2 of the 12 contracts are currently NYSED contracts. The total estimated annual value of the contracts is $3.9 million. The work group concurred that defining the market was difficult and negotiated a number of items that have never been in previous definitions. First, a provisional approval. This definition is valid for only 2 years. At the end of the 2-year period, the Council has the ability to review the marketplace before giving final approval. 2, all NYSED mail fulfillment contracts must be reported to you, the Council. The goal is to fully identify the marketplace and ensure that all contract work is in compliance. Never before has there been a detailed list of what cannot be done. Ad slicks, catalogs, badges, ballots, maps, magnets, business cards, the list goes on and on. 4, there are no corporate partners. This work can only be done by our non-for-profit members. No doubt you've all received a whole bunch of letters electronically on this definition, and the rhetoric, unfortunately, is reminiscent of language used by interest groups in the time leading up to the federal passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's inflammatory, with the sole purpose of inciting fear. The Preferred Source Program and individuals with disabilities have played no role in the demise of any specific industry. Suggesting that NYSED and the member agencies that serve individuals with disabilities have played a role in the printing industry's demise is patently untrue, and it cheapens our inclusion efforts. There is room in New York State for both the printers industry and our member agencies that serve individuals with disabilities. Claiming otherwise does both groups a disservice. An individual living with a disability is twice as likely to live in poverty and 3 times as likely to be homeless. Those who are willing to work and can work should be given the opportunity to do so, thereby accessing the same quality of life as their peers. Your positive recommendation of the work group definition and NYSED's application will preserve and save nearly 300 jobs for individuals with disabilities in New York. Thank you.
Thank you. OGS, I think we're getting a special treat, and Brad Allen is going to present that recommendation.
Thank you, Sean. As all of you who have read our recommendation know, we are recommending approval of this definition and application. And let me just discuss why that is. So I just want to take you back to 2016 when the work group met, and there were still a lot of things up in the air, including, as Maureen mentioned, the SED designation letter had not been updated recently. There was an ongoing OSC audit of preferred sources and digital printing. And so there were a lot of questions, and I think that the questions that were surrounding this application at the time led to the tabling of it. Just speaking briefly about the OSC audit, one of the things uncovered there was that corporate partners were being used for reproduction, reproduction is an approved service. It had only recently been clearly defined in the list at that time. And I think that there were agencies who had a misunderstanding of what was included in reproduction, and maybe there was some misunderstanding about what being a corporate partner meant. And so just for example, there was one local photocopying company, a for-profit company, that was doing reproduction for state agencies, and that led to concerns that that's not a preferred source. It shouldn't be. There was no preferred member involved in some cases. But I think that those issues are all getting resolved by the way we're approaching the definition and the conditions that we're putting on NYSED's use of the definition. As we mentioned, the definition that we're proposing today is based largely on what came out of the work group in 2016. That was a heavily negotiated definition. The printing industry was at the table. We were glad to have them at the table to understand their concerns. There were many concessions made on both sides, and what came out of that work group was a definition that clearly boxed in the types of materials that could be printed. And just to reiterate some of the things Maureen said, the only thing that can be printed are things that are going to be mailed and things that are going to be individualized to the recipient. There is an entire list of things that can't be printed, and that's important because we all acknowledge that during one of the work group meetings, we actually held it at the Center for Disability Services and got to see their equipment and their facilities firsthand. And the Printing Industry Alliance members who were there were concerned because they said, this is just printing equipment. I mean, this could be used for lots and lots of different things. It's a powerful tool that they have here. And so as part of that, to limit the kinds of things they can print, NYSED and its members have agreed. Now, we're not looking to do any other kind of printing as a preferred source contract. It's just going to be the things that the preferred sources used to get a form letter to photocopy and mail out to recipients. But now with modern technology, there's an expectation that letters are going to be individualized through mail merge, and that the master files are going to be sent electronically. That just was never covered in the definitions before. The only things that preferred sources could do is either photocopy or reproduce a master. The definition was restricted to only those things that are going to be individualized to a recipient and then mailed out. Back in 2016, one of the parts of the definition said that corporate partners could still be used for the non-printing component. Well, in recent discussions with NYSED, we've decided let's remove all of that entirely. Let's just say that this will only be done by the preferred source members themselves. No corporate partners allowed for mail fulfillment services at all. I will say that that is an unprecedented restriction on any of the services that are allowed on the list. Corporate partnering is allowed by statute, and we've never put any restriction on corporate partnering for any other definition. But in the interests of trying to address the concerns of the printing industry, we decided that it made sense to say, look, if a preferred source wants to do this, then they should be able to do the whole job and not take only part of the job and then farm out part of the job. The other important piece of this is it's a provisional approval. Under the statute, OGS staff has always taken the view that once a service or a commodity is on the list, the Procurement Council does not have the authority to take it off the list. So in this case, we've built in, we always believe that the Procurement Council can reserve to itself that right, and that's what we're suggesting here, is that this be a provisional definition that the Procurement Council can revisit. It's set to be revisited at the third meeting in 2020, but that would not stop a member from bringing it up at any meeting and making a motion to modify, or it could even be eliminated completely if the Procurement Council determines that there has been a significant effect on the commercial printing industry. And finally, I think the other important piece in terms of oversight and monitoring of how this is going to work is that NYSED is going to have to come back and report at every council meeting. There'll be a standing item on the agenda. NYSED's report on mail fulfillment services. If they've had any contracts since the last meeting, they're going to report on those, what status the contract is in, what it is that they've been printing, what the labor ratios are. There's a detailed list of information they have to provide, and I think that should give comfort to the Procurement Council members that unlike other definitions that get approved and then are on the list forever and we don't really know how it all works out, in this case, we're going to be hearing a lot about mail fulfillment services over the next 2 years, and you'll have an opportunity to judge for yourself how it's working out. So for those reasons, because of the protections that we're putting on for the council and to try to address some of the concerns raised by the PIA, OGS staff is recommending approval of this definition and the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Pravina?
Thank you. First, I'd like to apologize for the lateness of our recommendation. It was due to the fact that the definition changed a little, so we had to change our analysis based on that definition. I'm going to cut to the chase because I know we want to keep on time. But ESD also approves both the definition as well as the application for mail fulfillment services as proposed in the definition that you have in front of you. We wholeheartedly agree that this was a negotiated definition in 2016. NYSED as well as OGS have put provisions in here to make sure that this is really truly an extension of what is happening today to modernize what is happening in mail fulfillment services. We would also encourage agencies that are currently utilizing MWBEs and service-disabled veteran-owned businesses for paper supply and for printing cartridges and stuff to continue to doing that so that it has a minimal, if almost no effect on the industry. And also, they're right, it's the first time there's excluded documents. And so if the definition should change, we would just ask that we could do another analysis to see if adding extra services or adding different documents would make a change. But as of now, ESD has done an analysis, and we agree and concur with the recommendation to approve.
Great. Thank you, Pravina. So now, based on the rules that we talked about earlier, we are going to ask if there is a motion to approve on the table before we go into a discussion. We've been guided to the fact that that is the correct procedural methodology. So, Mary Beth and Joel to second it. Sorry? Okay, so we are going to put the definition up on the screen. Everybody has been provided that. So with a motion and a second on the table, we're now in discussion. So if folks could identify if they have comments, discussion to raise to, or questions that they need answered, we would love to open that to the council. Margaret Becker.
Good morning. I'm Margaret Becker, representing the Office of the State Comptroller. The question for us is somewhat narrow because I think, as Brad outlined, when this definition first came to the council a couple of years ago, we had an ongoing audit. And so I'll be looking at that lens, as I was listening to what we have. And I would, first of all, thank NYSED and OGS and ESD for presenting some very good information that really helps us think through the issue. But again, as I say, for the Office of the State Comptroller, it's a little bit of a narrow issue with respect to our audit. And Brad, thank you in particular for noting some of the issues that we had at the time. Another that was very important to us was the question of whether processes and procedures were in place to ensure that, in fact, all members and even partners, I'm going to broaden it a bit because the audit was broader than just members, had a fair shot at whatever business was being presented as a preferred source book of business to NYSED or others, if you will. But in this case, it was NYSED. And so at the time, our audit found that no, in fact, there wasn't assurance of the procedures that all members who potentially could compete for or get the business might be eligible for it. Now, I do want to say I commend NYSED for some management changes recently, for some changes in processes and procedures that frankly are very good, and we really appreciate it. But when it comes down to the question of ensuring this open and transparent process, we believe there are still some more steps to address the audit itself, some of the recommendations in the audit. So, as I say, we acknowledge that progress has been made, but what we would look for further, and I hope the record will indicate that what we're asking for, no matter what the vote is today, that going forward we're able to work further with NYSED to ensure that there are appropriate processes and procedures to address the kinds of issues that we had found in our audit of a couple of years ago. And so with that in mind, I would point out that this is a new and relatively complex definition as they go, and so understanding how to implement it, it may be confusing for agencies, and there may be questions that come up, and so to have a transparent, clearly defined process, we believe is imperative and is, again, one of the outstanding items that we still see. Thank you.
Margaret, is that a question that you want answered, or is that just a statement for the record?
No, that was just following on what Brad had outlined at a start. I wanted to sort of expand and give a fuller explanation of where we sit with our audit findings in particular, and so no, it's not a question, but thank you.
Great. Sean?
Sean Cullinane, local government. I just want to make sure I understand the process as it currently is done. Who currently prints the agency document? Is it the agency themselves, or do they have an outside printing contractor that does this work? That's part one of the questions.
So I'll open it to everybody who's done a review on that. Does ESD have an answer to that?
We do. Majority is done on agency sites. So majority of this is done on agency sites. If there is some that comes out, it's usually for printing supplies that you'll see subcontracted out, but it's majority of, especially on these contracts, and we did that through the companies, you'll see that like probably 98% is done on agency sites.
So if I may follow up, so by and large, there would be no outside printing contracts that are going to be lost by a change in this definition or the application?
The way this is proposed, yes, there should not be.
Thank you.
OGS, anything to add?
No.
NYSED, anything to add?
The only thing I would add is the example I used with OTDA. Those are printed in the print shop at OTDA and then shipped or couriered to the Center for Disability Services.
Okay. John, does that answer your question? Other comments or questions from council members? Okay. Sorry, Valerie.
Hi, Valerie White, Executive Chamber Designee and Executive Director of the Minority and Women Business Development Group. Just wanted to make a comment that the application and definition as proposed, we do believe will not have any negative impact on our MWBE program, and would, as the statement includes, is included in the ESD recommendation. So we do encourage people to continue to work through the MWB with their goals as they are today.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. Anyone else? Comments, questions? So there's two, as we become better at formal rules, thank you, Maureen, as we become better at formal rules from the chair's perspective, there's two mechanisms. If debate was to go on for a long time, but we could accept a motion to close debate. We're not seeing any other comments, which means we don't need a formal mechanism to go into the voting process. So what we're going to do now is hold our first roll call vote, which I'm very excited about. because I think it'll be easier for our administrative folks. So, with that said, again, the order has been determined as the order in the statute that everybody is seated. So,
Sean, can I just make a point that we're going to do 2 votes, right? And this
Correct.
first vote is just for the definition. And then we'll do
Correct.
a vote on approving NICID to provide the service.
correct. And that second vote will require a second motion and a second. Second. Okay. I'll work on it. I still think that's funny. Okay, so on the issue of approving the definition of, let me make sure, of mail fulfillment as it's displayed and as it was distributed to the council, please signify by saying yes or no or abstaining or using any other mechanism as appropriate. Division of Budget, Stuart Poole.
Yes.
Office of the State Comptroller, Margaret Becker.
Abstain?
Empire State Development, Pravina.
Yes.
Local Government Representative, Sean Cullinane.
Yes.
Legislative Appointee, Steve Casarda.
Yes.
This is a surprise to everybody what order they're in, so that's why it's taking a second. Legislative Appointee, Amber Mooney.
Yes.
Legislative Appointee, Winifred Schiff.
Yes.
Legislative Appointee, Ron Tescarella.
Yes.
Legislative Appointee, Julie Suarez.
Yes.
Agency Designee from the Department of Corrections, JP.
Yes.
Agency Designee from OPWDD, is Lisa here?
Yes.
Yeah, Lisa.
Yes.
Department of Agriculture and Markets, Paula.
Yes.
Department of Health, Mary Beth.
Yes.
SUNY, Tom Hipchin.
Yes.
Office of Mental Health, Jason Wilkie.
Yes.
And Office of Information Technology Services, Joe Lombardi.
Yes.
Okay. I'll defer to the recording secretary. Oh, I'm sorry. This is why we practice this. I apologize, Valerie, that we missed that on the list. Executive Chamber, Valerie White.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. To the recording secretaries, were all the votes cast? Yes. Okay. What is your result? Oh, chair votes yes. What is the result of the vote? Okay, so 17 yes, 1 abstention. Again, as we reiterated, the rules majority is 11, so that action passes. So that definition will be added to the list of definitions that the preferred sources in general are able to provide. The chair will now entertain a motion to approve NICID for to perform the services under that definition. Motion from Pravina and second from Steve Casarda. That motion is now on the floor. Does council have questions or discussion that they want to raise for that? JP.
JP Burrell from Docs. So if in the time period that's specified in here for the next time that we're going to do a review of this, if it's not brought to the council for whatever weird reason and nothing actually happens, what would happen to NICID's ability to offer that preferred source item? If absolutely nothing happened in the next 6 or 7 meetings, does their ability go away? Does their ability continue? Is it just default that they have the ability to do that?
So,
Brad, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take that if you don't mind. So the third meeting in 2020, this will be on the agenda for reconsideration, and the council will have essentially a few choices: to make it permanent, to amend it, to continue the provisional nature of it, to eliminate it. So you will have some decision to make at that point.
And if for some weird reason the council at that point would table any motion to make an action on that, what would happen at that point?
I think it would stay a provisional definition.
It would stay in its current status?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I would just add that because there is a reporting requirement at every meeting, so there will be action. There will be a report at every meeting between now and the third meeting in 2020 also. Other questions, comments in regard to the approval of NYSED for this application? Sean?
Sean Cullinane, Local Government Legislative. Just a question as to, have you had any communication from the Print Alliance, Print PIA? Are they here today making any comments?
So the tradition of this group is that the mechanism would be for one of the council members to yield their time if they're present. I do not know if they are present. I'm happy to, if a council member so desires, I'm happy to ask the group if the PIA is here. There has been a considerable communication from advocates on both sides of this application that have been provided to all of the council members and published publicly. There is some exception to that. There have been a couple of communications of late that have been distributed to all of the council members, but because of technical just constraints in getting it posted to the website, have not been posted yet. But every council member has every email and mail communication that has come in on all sides of this issue as late as yesterday afternoon. So if any additional comments were submitted this morning, I do not believe they've been distributed to the council. Do you want me to poll the group, to poll the audience to see if the PIA is here?
I would yield my time if there is a PIA representative here, yes.
Okay. Is the PIA present? Okay. So, Sean, you want to yield your time?
Yes.
Okay. And we would ask that the representative from the PIA keep their comments to 5 minutes. Is there a specific topic, Sean, that you want addressed? Just general comment on the application?
That's correct.
First of all, thank you very much, Sean. I really appreciate it. You have received a lot of information from us over the past 5 years, I guess, since this discussion ensued. I think our position's pretty clear. We sent summaries out yesterday and some other information. Our concerns are, again, opening the door to more work leaving the printing industry. I think that's a very valid concern. I don't think that, I kind of take exception to the characterization that it's, similar to what was done when the ACA was being debated. Our position is you have guidelines, you have preferred source guidelines that call for you to be concerned about effects on business. I don't know how much that has really been taken into consideration. There are products that were out for bid that ended up going preferred source out of the commercial industry here locally. There have been over 100 printing companies that have closed over the past 20 years or so. We believe that if this is approved, that there will be more closures, more lost jobs. And so we would ask, as this thing is debated further, to really give that some more consideration. And that's our position. Thank you. Any questions at all?
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the speaker while the time is still yielded? Just for the record again, could you make sure that our recording secretary has your name?
It's Tim Freeman. I'm President, Printing Industries Alliance.
Thank you. Any other questions for the speaker while the time is yielded? Okay. Thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Sean, did you have any follow-up?
No, thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions from the council about the topic that's open? Winifred?
Winifred Schiff from Legislative Appointee Interagency Council. I just wanted to mention that I think certainly adequate consideration has been given to the possibility of work leaving the printing industry. And I thank everybody who has done that work and found that that won't be a problem.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions from the council? Lisa?
Lisa Davis, OPWDD. I was wondering if Maureen could speak a little bit to the State Finance Law 162, which authorizes, or which is law relative to a preferred source, and why State Finance Law addresses the need to have preferred source vendors.
So, just, Maureen, before you start, obviously it's a question from the council. We want to allow that, but I think I want to make sure there are some constraints on this, because it is not specifically directed at the approval in this case. So because it's more general information, if we could keep your response to 2 minutes or 3 minutes, that would be great.
So I'll keep it very brief. The finance law and my understanding of the reason that it's in place is to create job opportunities for individuals with disabilities. Under preferred source law, NYSED is allowed to contract for specific items and services that are approved by this council. And the goal is to, on projects where we are working with a nonprofit, have 75% of the workforce on that contract disabled. In projects where we are working with a corporate partner, it's 51%. Currently in New York State, the individuals with disabilities have an unemployment rate of 67%. Most of the people we work with have found that there are real benefits to hiring individuals with disabilities, and we see real benefit to the program.
Thank you. And I just want to add one thing. That is, excuse me, I think the reason that 162 was created was because there was a realization that individuals with disabilities and the companies in which they work are at a disadvantage, and that's why they were removed from the marketplace and provided the authority to seek employment via State Finance Law 162. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Lisa. Did you have any follow-up, Lisa, or? Okay. Any other council members? Pravina?
Oh, sorry. Pravina Ravam from ESD. I know I ran through the analysis, but there is actually company data in the analysis ESD did. So we did look at companies, and we did a thorough analysis also of the industry as much as we could with public data sources. So that information is here. We find that it will not have an impact, so I just wanted to call attention that it is in the analysis.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? I'm now being careful to very carefully check my blind spots at the top of the table here. Anybody else? Any other council comments? Any other council questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed with a roll call vote on the motion to approve NYSED to perform the services under the definition of mail fulfillment. Stu Poole?
Yes.
Margaret Becker?
Abstain?
Pravina?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
I didn't miss it this time. Sean Cullinane?
Yes.
Steve Casarda?
Yes.
Amber Mooney?
Yes.
Winifred Schiff?
Yes.
Ron Tescarella?
Yes.
Julie Suarez?
Yes.
John Burrell?
Yes.
Lisa Davis?
Yes.
Paula Clark?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Tom Hipchin?
Yes. Yes.
Jason Wilkie?
Yes.
And Joe Lombardi?
Yes.
Recording secretaries, did I miss anybody this time? Oh, myself, yes. The biggest guy in the room. Okay. Recording secretaries, is the count 17 with one abstention? Okay, so the count is 17 in favor with one abstention, which means that the motion to approve NYSED for providing the mail fulfillment services has also been approved. The only remaining items on the on the agenda for today is open council discussion. I certainly want to make sure that there's enough time left for that after some of the discussions at the last meetings, and with all of the rules discussions and rules work groups that we talked about this morning. So does anybody have any open council discussion? Or is everybody's comments primarily saved for the rules work group now? Okay, so I don't see any over here, any over here. Go ahead.
I just have a question. Sorry. Julie Suarez, Cornell College of Ag and Life Sciences. I just had a suggestion. So the governor this past year had a really interesting and impactful and successful proposal to increase the school lunch reimbursement for schools that are using more than 30% local products. And I know Ag and Markets, Lisa Brooks and I were talking about this earlier, that it would be a really nice idea to have Ag and Markets or some of the farm to school grantees come in and talk to the council about what's being done to implement the governor's very wise policy decision to our school districts. So just a suggestion, I think it would be an interesting presentation. Be happy to help with that.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask staff to take that note, and then we'll get back to you and figure out what the mechanics of that are. We want to make sure that it's obviously presented in context, particularly around procurement and around the preference, just to stay in line with the purpose of the council. But if staff could make that note, and then we'll come back and get back to you and figure out how the mechanics of that will work. That's great, thank you. Any other suggestions, other business that needs to be brought in front of the council? Seeing none. JP, sorry. Oh, it was so close.
So close. Following up on the HBITS presentation, which I think Mark did a good job of explaining that at a really high level, I came to the recent realization that there's also PBIT contracts for project-based contracts for IT. If there could be a presentation on that also with a little bit more granularity of how it would work for agencies, I think that would be useful.
Great. And I think we'll also coordinate with the council member from IT to make sure that that is consistent with also the state's IT policies when we make that presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Anybody else? I was close the last time. Seeing none, the chair will entertain I'm sorry, before I do that, just a reminder, right now the schedule stands as the next meeting is January 30th, 2019, with the expectation that it is at the same time, the 11:30 time that we traditionally reserve for this in this room. So, with no other comments, Tom Hipchin makes a motion to adjourn, although we may have turned his mic off. Pravina's second. This is just a procedural vote, so we'll do it by voice. All in favor of adjourning, please signify by putting your hand up and saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? This meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all for your participation and for all the work preparing for it.